Okay, so we're finally here after a few detours. Today we're going to answer the questions: when to build military factories, infrastructure, what choices to take on the way to gain as much production output as possible as the United States of America. Things like improved working conditions, advisors, everything. So we're going to look at the historical US this turn. We're not going to try some early war shenanigans or something like that. We're going to go for war in 1941, mid 1941, and prepared as best as we can for that. And we will start with a big question: should you build infrastructure, and when should you start building military factories? And then go through all the decisions on the way and important events and everything. But we're gonna start with the military factories, infrastructure, the basis. When is it time to build it? So to the first part, infrastructure. Should you build infrastructure? Yes, you should build infrastructure, and you should build it in the best states to actually produce something. And these are the states up here. You have a few other with 8% infrastructures. It's more cheap to build just one infrastructure and build them in states with a lot of slots. The total slots is really important. Not as important to have open slots. So these are good because with technology later on, not later on, you will get this quite soon. You get 20% more factories in state here and 20% more factories in state with the second dispersed industry. So when you have 12 states to 12 slots to start out with, like in here, you will gain 2 slots or even more each time you gain that 20% extra factories in state. So I love to build in these states, and I will put a list on the screen how I built just to min-max this in the beginning. And looking economy-wise, you should build infrastructure until 1938. Of course, you build infrastructure in a state, and as soon as the infrastructure is 100, you start building factories in it. But you will max out these, and you will max out a lot, a lot of states in the United States, since you have a huge amount of civilian factories to actually build with. Uh, but that's no worries. Continue building infrastructure before you build anything else until 1938 or so, and then you can just start building without maxing out infrastructure if there's any slots that you need to fill. If you want to see more about this, I have a whole infrastructure video. I will post it up here or there or somewhere on the screen, so you can check it out if you want more about infrastructure. So let's get into the findings, and we're gonna check on everything with advisors and so forth later on, but we want to see mills versus civs. That's the main event. That's the most fun thing according to me, at least. So as the US, you want to be as strong as possible. Mid 41, if you're going historical, that's when the Japanese will come and when you're gonna join the war in Europe. So if you check here, and this really blew my mind because I wouldn't expect the military first being a strategy working for the US with all their debuffs and everything. But yeah, uh, military factories first is actually more viable as the US than Germany. And I had to think about this a little bit, and this has to do with that military factories, when you build a military factory in the beginning of the game, it doesn't have any debuffs or anything. It's a finely working military factory. The civs you build, on the other hand, in the beginning of the game is really, really worthless. Uh, they eat consumer goods as the mills, but the thing is, they only build at 50% speed because of all the debuffs. So a civilian factory built in the beginning of the game is only half as good as it should be and as it is for all the other nations in the game. So for the US, military factories from the start of the game is the best thing if you want to be as strong as possible in 1941. But I want to say this is just the total output, of course, and we will look at that. When do you get that output? You will have older equipment with a military factories first strategy than going military factories later, because they will produce later and produce newer stuff. And as you see, January 43 here, military factories from the start are beginning to lose out from the other strategies, military factories from 37, and military factories from January 38. And late game, they have surpassed 1944 way. But just imagining that military factories from the start should be a viable strategy as the US. I did not. I had no clue. So that's really fun, and that's something to play with. But otherwise, you have the stats here, and it's always something that you need to choose from. Is this what I want to do or not? And another fun thing, and this is something I really want to put in here before we go and look at how it looks from day-to-day basis output. Uh, I made a run and just threw in what happens if you convert 60 uh, civilian factories to military factories mid 41. Just convert them, and as you know, might know, US has a lot of good focuses, or one good focus. I think it has a great advisor also, and you can go to total mob, making the cost of conversion down to one output from a civilian factory. So you can convert 60 factories in a second because it doesn't cost anything. The cost reduction is 100%. Uh, and as you see, if you build military factories from January 37 compared to this one, uh, do this conversion and you will have gained 100,000 more of production output uh, in January 43, and you will still be way ahead in January 44 with that conversion. And the only thing I would say, convert as much as you can. The only thing hindering you to convert all your civilian factories is that you need to trade for resources, probably. Uh, if you have 60 more military factories, you will have a lot more of resource need. But otherwise, I would say convert as much as you can. That's really, really good. You will have a military output that will surpass anything that anyone expects at that point and build new and modern equipment. So I wanted to throw that in there. I think it's wonderful with the US with their focus. I will put the focus up here somewhere so you will see it. But the conclusion is you could build civilian factories. That's not bad as the US. You will gain something later on in the game. But I wouldn't go too far with it. Perhaps building to 37 would be optimal. You could go for 38. You will lose some, but you will get production uh, of newer equipment instead. But somewhere there, don't go too hard on civilian factories, even if you feel like the US is the right country to do it. You could go military factories from the start, and that would gain you an advantage in the production output until 1941. So let's look at the next graph, and I just want to stop a little bit so everyone understand what this is. I love this graph, but it's also not the easiest one to see and understand. What we have here to the left, the 500,000, 1,500, that's military factory output per day. How much output your military factories have each day. And we have the colors here. Blue is if you build military factories from the start. Red is from 1937, and yellow is if you build military factories from 1st of January 1938. So a blue dot here, like here, says that you will have 500 in factory output each day building military equipment. So as you see here, building military factories from the start gains you a great advantage in the beginning of the game. Up here until 38, I think you're also here at 39, actually building more with military factories at the start than later on. But you see that the blue line fades out here, and you will be building less than you would have with other two strategies. Military factories from 37, you see the red line, I think it comes over here from the blue line. Here someone later than 39, you will surpass and build more new equipment with that strategy each day. And 38 will, building military factories from 38 will give you more equipment from 1940 and so forth. So understanding this, the key points and seeing this graph, you see that the late game building military factories from the start will give you a lot less equipment than otherwise each day. But the thing is, building military factory from the start will gain you a stockpile early on. So I can't say exactly how you will play the game. If you really, really want to build stuff, 1941, you have a great airplane design coming up, you have tanks or something, then building military factories from 38 might be the absolutely best thing to do because you want to build and have a lot of production later on when you have better technology. So you always need to make that decision. When do I want to build what equipment? Do I want to have a lot of early equipment or not? And with that said, I must say that early equipment can be really, really good. If you haven't seen Badger's video about CAS and tactical bombers at CAS missions, do that, because early CAS is as good as any other CAS in certain situations. So that's also something to keep in mind. What can I build that's actually really good with this early production that will gain me an advantage? Because only building infantry equipment from 36 to 1940 won't gain you that advantage. So you need to find, what do I want to build if I have early production output, because you won't be able to build more than tanks and so forth. And here we have the same one, but with the yellow strategy being when you convert 60 civilian factories to military factories by mid 41. And as you see, we have a huge spike here when those military factories come into production. And I'm going with the US always dispersed industry, so we get that production output quick. It will dissipate because you will have less civilians, so somewhere at 43 you will gain less equipment. But this boost for 1.5 years in a crucial point of the war might be the thing that wins you the war. So this conversion strategy is something I really, really recommend, as long as you have resources to build what you want to build. And before we continue, I just want to make a huge shout out to all our patrons. I also want to say we have a new guide coming up every Monday. We have new Patreon guides every second Tuesday, and we have our amazing studio posting their games. And the next game will be in the beginning of April, and the date will be coming up soon. So let's continue with the economy guide. So we're back in game. We can't look at graphs all day. Another question I got from Barrier before this is it worth it to convert industries in the beginning, going from military factories and converting them to civilian factories? And no, it's not. It's not worth to convert military factories. And as you saw in the graphs, we want military factories from the beginning. It's all even better building military factories from the start almost than any other choice. So start paying for conversions to civilian factories when you want military factories at least 37, 38. It's not worth it. You won't get that back, so don't convert anything to civilian factories. It looks good on paper, it doesn't give you what you want. Another thing that we didn't look in the graphs, it's dockyards. Building dockyards is really important, and it mostly depends on how you play the game. Everyone wants military factories. I haven't heard a single HOI player that's just going for dockyards. It could be someone out there, perhaps Badger, if anyone, but you want to build military factories. But dockyards is another thing. Yeah, you want to rule the seas, and if you rule the seas, it's really much more binary. If you're good at the naval, you will win the naval battles by building better and smarter ships and spying on your enemy and getting everything that you want. Most people don't love navy, so perhaps you want some more dockyards just to secure the seas. And if you're gonna go with dockyards, build them early on, because they have huge perks early on compared to military factories. And the first thing is that they don't take on consumer goods. So the consumer goods go for your civilian and military factories. So for the US, who has a high consumer goods rate, building dockyards in the beginning is a really, really good option. And compared to military factories that are debuffed by the production cap at 50%, Navy doesn't have a production cap. So they have the full production early on. They don't have all the modifiers, but they don't have that half production cap killing your factory output in the early game. So building dockyards early on is the thing to go. So go civilian factories if you want that, dockyards, and later on military factories. And if you want to see some good tips on how to utilize dockyards, because the US have the naval treaty, there's a way past that also gives you actually a better navy. I have another guide up, I think it's up there, I will show it, how to min-max your navy with examples just from the US. So this US economy guide has been coming for a while, but I haven't gotten all the time to really do it. So, but look at that guide and you will see some great tips on building in the Navy as the US. Another big question, and this is something I really wonder about. Do you want to spend 100 pp on improved workers conditions? Because you have that debuff on 10% consumer good factories factor that hurts you a lot, but you gain that weekly stability, but you have to pay with factory output. And with the US having a low factory count at the beginning, the factory output, it does make a difference, but not a huge difference. So when I tested it, I put it into my calculator, I got the results. Yeah, you should absolutely go for one improved worker condition. I would say put it like 37 or something like that uh, to gain that extra stability. Uh, and that extra stability also will drag down your consumer goods factories factor. So even if you have half a year with improved worker conditions, with a debuff, you will get a buff later on with some extra percent consumer good factory factor. I calculated it, and the right amount, not just the factor, it gained like two consumer goods less, which gave you, I think it was like 6 factors. And that's really useful. So improve worker condition, once do it early 37 and you will be really, really fine. Um, I also try to put in one more improved worker conditions, because when you go to war, you get a 20% stability debuff, and that hurts your factory output, especially since when you're at war, you probably go total war, and consumer goods factories factor are irrelevant from that point. But it hurts your factory output. But even though it hurts your factory output, it's too expensive to do late game. So I wouldn't recommend to do more than one improved worker condition. Another guy or thing I really liked that I want to mention before we go through how I played the game and which choices I made is to go to suspend the persecution, however you pronounce it, and then reach out to the WEAR group. You will have an economy advisor, but the economy advisor is the first thing you choose anyway. Not Harry White, the other guy, Henry Morgenthau, and you can only have one. But what you really, really want with this reach out to the WEAR group is, where is this epic guy? We have him somewhere here. Uh, it's the economist. The production efficiency cap is ah. I love production efficiency cap. We have, we have a guide for that too, since I've been doing other guides except this one. So I will put in. It's up. No, it's up there it is. I will put it up there, and you can check out why production efficiency cap is really, really good to have. But it's really, really effective early on. It gives you a lot more factory output. And choosing this guy, even if you get a 5% stability hit from the first one and you need to spend a lot of time on it, it gave you until war 5% extra uh, factory output points than otherwise. So choosing this guy gives you 5% extra to play with, and 5% extra is extremely great when playing any country. So you will be well more prepared. So this is something I really like. And if you're going dockyards, I also want to say that Maritime Commission is a good thing to choose. You get some extra dockyards. It's not that important, since you will only build dockyards for a s- small amount of time, probably like half a year, 1 year, or whatever your strategy calls for. But it's something that can give you a boost. So here comes a lot of tips and things when you're doing your playthrough. The first thing that I really want to do is uh, getting the dispersed industry 1 as soon as possible. And dispersed industry is the right way to go as the US. We have a guide for that too. I put it up, yeah, by everything else. So go disperse industry. It takes 136 days for the first one to research. So what I usually do is that I also take electronical engineering, take this one, just wait for that to finish and then save up. So I have 30 days saved and I get the next technology 30 days earlier. And when you're researching, research ahead of time, not that much, but a couple of months ahead of time, save up the research and then research ahead of time. So you get that extra states, more production efficiency cap, and and more construction speed. So I would, as the US, since you want the economy rolling, research ahead of time. Not too much, a couple of months, but actually do it so you get at least more states, factories in states opened and more factory output for your economy. Um, Next thing I want to talk about, it's the election coming in 36. After that, you will have the possibility to build stuff that your senators want. Just build them and get more support in the Senate. I made the playthrough. I built what they want. It was no problem with House support. You could be forced to do some kind of special measures or something like that. And it also depends on how much you want to amend the budget. And amending the budget in the beginning is really, really good. You will gain like 9 civilian factories out from this 10% consumer good factories factor. So yeah, it's good, but you need representatives to actually do it so you don't get stuck in the more important thing, and that's the tree down here so you can get all these acts. The first advisor, absolutely first advisor you want is Henry Morgenthau. 15% consumer good factories factor. Oh, I hate that word. But still, 15% less will give you like 17 civilian factories more to build with. It's the 100% best choice starting out the game. The second one I will actually take, and this is not economy, but I threw it in there anyway. I love taking an um, what is it called? Chief of Army, giving you army experience so you can quickly go and take professional officer corps so you get more command power, because command power is really, really important as the US. You want it, of course, to be able to take more military staff, but something that's absolutely needed. And let's go to that save game. Um, Here we have it. It's July 37, and we have a war in China. So what you want to do, always want to do, is send an attaché to China, and you got a lot of experience, and that's wonderful. But what you really do get is war support, 10%. So that's something you really want to do. We have the war support up at 23 right now. There's some battles going on. This makes you soon be able to take the giant awakes as soon as the war has dragged on for a little bit and the German starts doing some shenanigans in Europe. So those 10% is extremely valuable. So you should always have the command power necessary to send an attaché as soon as possible. As soon as you start going down this path, coming to partial mobilization, just save for that when you're going for the giant wakes, uh, so you can take partial mobilization as soon as possible. And when you do that, amend the budget gets less good, because that 10% are going from the base. I have a video about this also. So it comes off from the base. The base is lower, and it only gives like 2% consumer goods in the end. This at a later stage of the game. So I just wanted to say that it's not as good as it would have been as it is early in the game. This must have been the longest video I've done until now, and I hope you enjoyed it. I really loved making this video and going into all the small details, and starting off with the huge and biggest question, civilians versus military factories, which is a question I love and will always love and will always try to find the right answer for you guys and myself playing the game. So I hope you enjoy, subscribe and like the channel. We will get new guides every Monday. We have our Patreon guides every second Thursday. So I hope you enjoy. We have a new game coming up here in the beginning of April. So watch that in the studio and the amazing work those guys do. And with that said, I will see you guys next time.